You're listening to
Sound.
Insightful.
Bible teaching.
For a meaningful
For a meaningful Christian walk.
The song we just sang, it's off, but may a clear, controlling vision of what's God's economy direct my heart. This is the essence of what I want to share tonight. And I'm saying it now because once I share it, you're not going to get that point. So I want to make sure you got it right. What's the main point tonight? Yeah, eating. That's good.
Tree of life?
Tree of life. A clear, controlling vision. Last time we talked about Abraham, right? And Abraham had God's appearing. Abraham believed God. Abraham followed God. Abraham was one that we would say is on the line of life. Definitely. He became the father of the called race. Tonight we're not going to talk about Abraham. We're going to talk about his nephew, Lot. How many of you have heard of Lot? How many of you have heard a lot about Lot? A few, not many. Now we talked about the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And it's like these two lines run through the Bible. So my question is, which line was Lot on?
Not the life.
Huh?
Not the line of life.
You said not the line of life. You ever read the Bible?
No, I haven't. Yes, I have.
There's some verses at the bottom of the page. 2 Peter chapter 2, verse 7 and 8. He's called righteous Lot. And he's called a righteous man by Peter. Can a righteous man be not on the tree of life?
Ooh. Good question.
All scripture is God-breathed. But, so this is just a question to keep in mind, not to question everything. Then I want you to think of a word that characterizes Lot. The word is not righteous. It's something else. Huh? Someone said defeated. That's a good word. I got a better word. The word is passive. I'm going to go through, basically I'm going to go through the story. And not every verse is on here. There's, in Genesis, there's kind of, Lot is mentioned a few times. And I'm going to point some things out as we go along. Don't expect me to get done by quarter hour. I'm going to say right at the beginning, I'm not going to keep the time. I'm going to try. But there's just really a lot of burden in this. You know, considering what we're going to share, it's like, Lot, is there enough to like really have a whole higher down? Yeah, there really is. So anyway, Lot is first mentioned. Abram, who becomes Abraham, he's called, and he leaves this homeland of Haran. And it says Lot went with him. This is the first verse on the page. I'm not going to read every verse. They're there for your reference. Lot was Abraham's nephew, his brother's son. And why did he take him with him? I don't know, because God said, leave your father's house, which presumably means your relatives. Abraham took him with him. Maybe he didn't have a son of his own, maybe he wanted some help, I don't know. He took him with him. And Lot stayed with him in his journeys. Jehovah appeared to Abraham. How many times did Jehovah appear to Lot?
0.
None. At least not recorded. Remember that. Who is Lot following? Abraham. Why is he following Abraham?
Because he was called.
Huh?
Because he was called, maybe.
You have to wonder. Why was he following Abraham? Abraham took him along. His father was dead. Maybe he just came along. I don't think he was following Abraham because Jehovah appeared to Abraham. This is my opinion. He was following Abraham because, let's face it, David, you know, if you knew that God had appeared to someone, and there was all the evidence and all the proof, and, you know, God kept, you know, Abraham says, let's go here, and God appears to him again, and God is blessing him. Would you want to separate yourself from someone like that? This is really, really, really important. At that time, in that age, there was one person that Jehovah had appeared to, and that was Abraham. No one else. Now, eventually, in a very important story, Sarah gets to see, you know, God comes with two angels appearing as man. They have a meal together. So you could say Sarah saw him too. And she was very aware this was Jehovah. But anyway, the appearing and the calling was just to Abraham. So if you could be sure, Annie, that there's someone that has had this, it's just like, wherever you go, I will go. But the cautionary thing is, what if someone just says, God spoke to me? And we've got people throughout the generations. Some say, I'm the reincarnation of Christ. Some say this, some say that. So, you got to be careful. But in principle, you got to realize, if there's someone that has God's appearing, you got to stick with them. And this is not the same as just being a godly person. Understand the difference. You know, someone can be a very godly person. I try to do good, read the Bible, do all these kind of things. These are good things. You know, do it. That's versus someone who's really got the vision. And I'm not going to get into it tonight, but if you trace not just church history, you go back through the whole Bible, human history, you can trace there are different ones at that time and that age. They had the vision of that age. If you wanted to be with what the Lord is doing, you know, now we've got millions and millions and millions, hundreds of millions of Christians. Many of them are real seekers, following the Lord. It's not bad to attach yourself to someone like that. But eventually, well, I'll use this one. At one point, John the Baptist, you all know him, right? At his time, for a brief moment in time, he was the one you needed to follow. Even though he was alive and Jesus was alive, Jesus had not yet begun his ministry. If you wanted to be with the one who was doing what God was doing, at that moment, you followed John the Baptist. And they did. But then Jesus came. He was already alive, but you know, John baptized him. And you know, some of John the Baptist's disciples, like John the Apostle, he left John the Baptist to follow Jesus. Now, John the Baptist could have said, hey, wait, guys, you know, you're my followers, you know. You're my team here, we're still doing good things. Even John the Baptist should have dropped what he was doing and followed Jesus. He didn't. And that eventually caused a lot of problems. It's not that evident. I mean, you don't have to read between the lines. Eventually, John the Baptist's disciples were speaking against Jesus and questioning Jesus. And they joined themselves with the Pharisees to come question Jesus. This is not good. John the Baptist himself, he baptizes Jesus. He's very clear this is, you know, who he says he is. Later, when he's in prison, he sends some disciples to ask, are you really the Christ? So there's a questioning. He knew he was the Christ. He just wanted to get out of prison. He was hoping Jesus would do something for him. And Jesus did something for him. He didn't get him out of prison. He got beheaded. That seems pretty bad. But I can't remember who it was, some Bible expositor. He says a little note. It's like, at long last, John the Baptist gives away wholly to Jesus when he gets beheaded. My point in this is, don't get your head cut off. But and it's not that clear. But if you were there at that time, you can follow John the Baptist or you can follow Jesus. Now, knowing what we know, who would you follow? Jesus. If you say John the Baptist, then I'd say you don't know anything. Don't say, I want to go with the underdog. No, I mean, God is not just with Jesus, God is Jesus. Why would you go with John the Baptist? At this time, God was with Abraham. So Lot, absent any direct appearing of God to him, he should have just stuck with Abraham. But he didn't. They went down to Egypt together. The verses aren't on there. It doesn't talk about Lot being in Egypt, but it talks about them coming back from Egypt. He had to have been with them. You look in Genesis 13. By now, Abraham has his possessions. Lot has his possessions. These are herds of animals, and eventually there's just too many. And so Lot's employees, the herdsmen, shepherds, are fighting with Abraham's because they just got too many people. So Abraham goes to Lot. And he says, dear nephew, we don't want any strife. How about, I'll make a proposal. Let's just separate. And you look around, and whatever part of the land you want to go to, you go. And then whatever's left, I'll take. Lot took him up on the offer. Which to me shows that he was not that interested in following God. And so he looks around and it's like, oh, look there's like this plain of the Jordan, well watered everywhere. And it makes note, this is before Jehovah destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, which are on the plain. And so he chose for himself. He picked the best. And would you do the same thing? You're given a choice, Jenny, you can take this land or that land. Which would you choose? Would you choose the best?
It's just follow my heart.
Follow your heart? What he should have done, look, this is in hindsight, but even if he had some clarity, he could have said, Abraham, boy, yeah, I recognize we got problems. My folks are fighting with your folks. But you have the appearing of God. You've been called by God. I don't care. You can have all my herds. I'll fire my herdsmen. I'll do what I've got to do. I'll send them away. Maybe they can go away. But I'm going to stay with you. This is, when Jesus with his disciples, in John chapter 6, he feeds 5,000 people. And they're hanging around because they want more food. And Jesus says, okay, you want food? You need to eat my flesh, drink my blood. And they're like, whoa, this is weird. We're out of here. And so he turns to his disciples and he says, you guys going to leave too? And Peter says, where are we going to go? You have the words of eternal life. Peter saw. He had the revelation. He saw who Jesus was. And it's like, yeah, we just lost 5,000 people. Actually, it's more than 5,000. It's 5,000 men. There had to be some women and children in there too. If you're following Jesus, it's like, hey, big miscalculation here. You never should have said that. You could still have 10,000 followers. But anyway, they all left. Because he wasn't going to give them the physical food. And instead, he's talking about cannibalism, like they thought. Anyway, it's just like, this is too weird. I can't take it. Peter's like, where are we going to go? I don't understand what you're talking about. But I know you've got the words of eternal life. I'm going to stick with you. I'll even die with you. Of course, he said that too. A little overzealous. Eventually, he did die for the Lord. Well, anyway, so Lot chooses for himself in verse 12 in chapter 13. Abraham kept the land that Jehovah gave him, dwelt in the land of Canaan. Lot dwelt in the cities of the plain, and moved his tent as far as Sodom. And then, just to make it clear, verse 13 says, now the men of Sodom were very wicked and sinful towards Jehovah. You know, Sodom, it was an actual place. But this just typifies the sinfulness, the filthiness of the flesh. This is like the worst of the worst. It's one thing, I'm not going to be with Abraham. We're going to separate. But for sure, I'm not going to go anywhere near Sodom. But he just drifted. And he drifted. Eventually, he was in Sodom. He has his tent towards Sodom. I've got another section that's not on here. It's the next chapter. Eventually, he's dwelling in Sodom. And it's taken captive. And Abraham goes out with his men. We'll get into that maybe next time. Rescues them. Returns everyone. But Sodom is just a wicked, wicked, evil place. So then what happens? Eventually, Jehovah comes, two of his angels, has dinner with Abraham, and we'll get into this later too. But, and he says, I'm going to destroy Sodom. It's like, it's really bad. But he let Abraham know. So Abraham basically made intercession. It's like this really interesting bargaining going on. But at the end, Abraham realized Sodom's still going to be destroyed. It was not that successful. But it is clear that because he interceded, Lot was eventually saved. So chapter 19, this is one of those things, it's like this Bible story everyone hears about. But in hearing about it, I don't think there's a strong enough impression. So two angels go to Sodom. This is chapter 19. And they go and they meet Lot. Lot takes them into his house. He's not aware that they're angels at the moment. They're just two people he's offering hospitality to. Then the men of the city come out and they're beating on Lot's door. It's like, hey, send those two men out. We want to have our way with them. This wasn't like some random crazy guy. And everyone's saying, oh, that guy's so bad. This is the men of the city. And even Lot, it says in verse 1, it says Lot was sitting in the gate of Sodom. So Lot was not just living nearby Sodom. He wasn't just living in Sodom. He was at the gate, which indicates he was one of the rulers of the city. So he's gone. He's in Sodom. Peter says he's righteous. And he was tormented by their bad behavior. Why didn't he just leave? He didn't have to live there. But he was living there. Anyway, the angels, the men are trying to get at him, and angels make them blind so they can't see. And then they say, Lot, we got to go. God is going to destroy the city. And if you got some angels in your house, and the men are talking about doing all kinds of wicked things, the angels cause them to be blind, and they say, God's going to destroy the city, what would your first move be? Shouldn't it be, let's get out of here? What's it say? Verse 16, it says, he lingered. Why are you sticking around? And it says, so the men seized him, and they said, take whoever you got. And they went to his sons-in-law, and they thought, oh, he's just joking. It's like if you tell people that Jesus is coming back, the world's going to end. It's like, oh, I don't believe that. That's just a joke. And they got out of the city, but they had to get dragged out. In verse 17, it says, escape for your life. Do not look behind you. They're telling 4 people, Lot, his wife, and his 2 daughters. Escaped to the hills, and then he destroyed everything. Verse 26 says his wife looked back, and she became a pillar of salt. Aaron Brennan, Luke 17:32.
Remember Lot's wife.
Remember Lot's wife. This is in verse 31. These 2 verses are towards the bottom. This is when the Lord comes back. And he's telling the Jewish people, leave your house, just leave everything. Don't look back. And he says, remember Lot's wife. So Lot's wife becomes a warning. She became a pillar of salt. I don't know what a pillar of salt is. I know what salt is. I know what a pillar is. But anyway, she was no longer his wife. She was a pillar of salt. And what do you do with a pillar of salt? It's salt. The Bible says you're the salt of the earth. Right? It's good for nothing. I mean, what? I want some salt on my hamburger. I mean, what? You gotta. It's useless. So she became useless. She lost her function probably as a living human being. You can imagine like what really happened. I don't know. But the point is, she's useless. Jesus said, you're the salt of the earth. But then he also says, if the salt loses its taste, it's good for nothing. You know what the point of being the salt of the earth is? I don't like to mention other groups. There's a group that has salt in their meat. And not here, but back when I was in Madison, I met one of them, and it's like, why do you call yourself salt, whatever? And the guy really couldn't answer. It's like, well, it's in the Bible. I think it's just like it's a catchy name or something. The point of the salt, you know what salt is used for, other than making things taste good? Preservative. And it kills the germs. So as believers, this is what we should be on the earth. We need to be a preservative against all the darkness and all the evil. Lot's wife, she wasn't in Sodom, she wasn't destroyed, and then she wasn't saved. She's salt, but she's useless. And why did she look back? David, the angels say, don't look back. Why would you look back? Misses her home. Maybe misses her friends. What's going to happen? She loved Sodom. You can say, oh no, she only loved her. It doesn't matter what part of Sodom. She loved Sodom. You can say, well, that was the good part of Sodom. It's Sodom. God didn't just destroy the bad parts. If he was going to preserve Lot's house, he would have said, stay in the house, we're going to burn everything else, your house will be preserved. He wiped the whole thing out. Her heart was still with Sodom. When Jesus said, escape, escape, it's like, this is all going to be destroyed. Don't let this attract you. David, would you look back?
No.
I think I would. Just out of curiosity. What is going on back there? Whoa! Look at that explosion. Eventually, a lot of things are going to get destroyed. And there's going to be a lot of rejoicing in that destruction. Babylon the Great is going to be burned. And if you look in the New Testament, that's when all the hallelujahs come out. So, you know, as bad as Sodom was, there were people living there. Probably a lot of people living there. And it's like, oh, that's so cruel. Why would God destroy all those people? They can't be that bad. No, they were that bad. Were they all that bad? I don't know. God wiped it out. And Lot's wife, who's never named, she's only Lot's wife, still loved Sodom. Okay, so they escape. Now there's 3 of them. And they go to a little city, and they leave there to live in a cave. So he's got Lot and his 2 daughters. Their 2 daughters no longer have their husbands. Verse 30, they dwelt in a cave. Now, you're there, no husbands, with your father, he's just lost his wife. What should you do? I mean, what would be the first thing that you would think of? Would it be, let's get Dad drunk and sleep with him so we can have children? Would that be the first thing you would think of? Fortunately, when they were escaping, they took the wine with them. It's like, let's get out. Oh, let's take the wine. I mean, it sounds, but this really happened. I don't know what they were thinking. I mean, someone said, oh, they thought there's nobody left in there. They just went to a city and left. At least they realized there's people living there. I mean, they say something, it almost sounds spiritual. Come, let us make our father drink wine. That's not spiritual. And let us lie with him, that we may preserve alive seed from our father. Isn't that noble? I'll give up my body so my father can have a child by incest. You know, their children, Lot would be their father and their grandfather. Just think how messed up that is. But they did it. Now Lot, you know, he could plead innocence a little bit. Maybe it's like, oh, they got me drunk. Why are you letting your children get you drunk? I mean, none of you has kids, I don't think. You are kids. Your parents do everything you say? Kind of stupid ideas and crazy things? I mean, it's just like to even talk about this, it's like a joke, but it's just even shameful to even talk about this. I was just considering, why, how would the daughters even think of something so terrible? They were brought up in Sodom. So, maybe in Sodom, anything goes. You know, you're not hurting anyone, right? I feel like having incest with my father. You know, this is who I am. And that was the lifestyle in Sodom. Just embrace, you know, be who you want to be. I don't know what. You can see the parallel with this age. Jesus in Luke, when he says this, you know, they ask, what will your coming be like? And one hand he says it's like the days of Noah. He also says it will be like the days of Sodom. Meaning this age today, before the Lord returns, is like the days of Sodom. Not just that it's going to be destroyed. If you grew up in Sodom your whole life, and you saw how the people behaved, that would to you be normal. To us, we look at it and it's like, this is extremely wrong. This is abnormal. People should not behave like this. But to them, you know, they just had I don't know what they had. I didn't live there. Free society, everyone, as long as you don't kill someone, everything goes. Whatever you want to do. Express yourself. Be yourself. Free to be you and me. This is the environment. This is where Lot ended up. And Lot even became part of the, ruling establishment in Sodom. His children were raised in Sodom. His wife loved Sodom. So the warning is, why did he stay with Abraham? He could look back, maybe he has looked back. Maybe one day we'll meet him. I don't know if we will. And say, Lot, why did you do that? And, I don't know. I don't want to say I'm any different. But we have to be different. So what's the first thought? What's the line from that song? A clear, controlling vision of God's economy direct our hearts. So you can argue with me. You will not win. You never win an argument. But you might think you defeated me. You never do. Because I only argue when I'm right. Yeah. That's the smart thing to do. Right. And to say today's age is just Sodom, that is not a stretch. But you all, me too, I'm a different generation, have been brought up in this. You can look at the violence. Every other day there's a mass shooting. And it's like, how do we solve this? How do we take care of it? How do we, we got to do something. So let's ban guns. And, I'm not in favor of everyone owning a gun. That's not the problem. And let's do this, let's do that. That's not the problem. Let's teach people to love each other. That's not the solution. The solution is God. The solution is you've separated yourself from Abraham. You've separated yourself from a vision of what God is doing on the earth. If I know that God created me for His purpose and He's chosen you, I'm not going to do anything else other than follow God. That's my only choice. I'm not going to go kill people. But there's an enemy. There's the devil. And he's going to do everything. And he does things very slowly and very subtly and very strategically. So that eventually, things that were before seen as terrible sins now are embraced and promoted. This is Sodom. This is the age we live in. So we need to escape. We need to escape. What does that mean? You got to follow Abraham. You got to get with this vision of what God is doing. Otherwise, we're just stupefied. We don't know the destruction is coming. We're not doing anything positive with our life. We're pursuing our career. We're pursuing this. We're pursuing our happiness, our choice. Lot had his choice. Does this make sense? This is a strong word. It's a very negative word. It's kind of a scary word. But it's like a big, big warning. Why is this in the Bible? It's not just an interesting Bible story. That's why I use the word passive for a lot. If he would have been actively seeking God, but he just drifted, went down towards Sodom. Hey, as my wife might have said, hey, there's a house for sale in Sodom, good price. Oh, it's not so bad. They're a little bit wicked, but people they do their own thing and end up living in Sodom. Then there's an election. Hey, honey, you should run for the school board. And so Lot gets on the school board, and then it's like, eventually he's on the city council or something like that in Sodom. And then he ends up, his daughters grow up there, get him drunk. And they have 2 children. They have 2 boys, Ammon and Moab. These are very significant names in the Bible because these two became a nation, each of them a nation, always fighting against Israel. So not only did he commit incest, that was bad enough, but the offspring became big, big opposers. And that's not surprising. Look at the source. The source is Sodom. The source is the devil. So, on that positive note, well, I should say, we all need to be clear.
Right.
This does not have to be our fate.
Right.
Of course, the outward things, I can't imagine anybody would get their father drunk and sleep with him. So if the take-home message is just don't do that, you've missed the take-home message. We can escape, but you have to be active. You have to choose God. You have to choose God's economy. You have to choose this vision. You have to choose life. And it will mean going against many other people, not opposing them, not being mean to them. But this age is not for God. This age is very much opposed to God. So we don't need to be peculiar. We're sojourners. We're strangers and sojourners in this age. We have to live in the world. The only way out is death. Kill yourself, that's bad. In many different levels. But we can escape. One way we escape is just be together. Right now, no one is committing any sins. No one is drinking wine. No one's getting their father drunk.
Amen.
It's good. Pursue, flee youthful lusts. It's like flee Sodom. Pursue with those who call on the Lord out of a pure heart. This is a real salvation. You won't have to be dragged out of Sodom. You just stick with those who are really loving the Lord, pursuing the Lord. And then you can pray, Lord, keep me. I don't want to be like Lot. I don't want to fall into Sodom, which is subtle. But I don't want to go that way. And Lord, show me this vision. Show me the way I should go. I only want to follow you. So this is the way we can escape.